Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the session 2 on climate change, SDGs, and developing countries. Now, please welcome Professor Johan Son, Division of Environmental Science and Ecological Engineering of Korea University, with a big round of applause.
I'm Johan Son from Korea University. May I share the screen? It is my great pleasure to speak today. My talk is about Korea Central Asia Forestry Cooperation in terms of ODA project of Korea Forest Service and prospect. Contents, background, current ODA project, possible project, and finally, prospect. First, brief background. As you know, former Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, stressed the importance of a forest in climate change and other issues. Again, we see a very important aspect of forest in terms of environment, society, and economy, and also in terms of global agenda, such as SDGs or climate change through UNFCCC, CBD, and UNCCD. Forestry is considered as an important sector. However, in Central Asia, land degradation by natural and artificial disturbances, including climate change, is rapidly occurring. As you understand, the Republic of Korea is one of the only 4 countries that has a successful history of forest rehabilitation following the World War II by FAO. And Korea Forest Service has several green ODA, like forest rehabilitation project in Central Asia. So I would like to share those information with you and propose some prospect. You understand Central Asia through history and the current map. Previously, Humboldt, who was a German geologist, used the term Central Asia in 1843. During the Soviet Union, only 4 countries were considered as Central Asia, but nowadays we included one more, so 5 countries in Central Asia, including Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan. I'd like to briefly mention the current kind of green ODA project in Central Asia through my experiences. First one is urban park in Astana, the capital city of Kazakhstan. Korea Forest Service provided some fund to build a friendship forest in Astana. Now new name is Nur Sultan, as you know. About 1.2 hectare Korean traditional urban park was built using $1 million US during 2016 and 2017. This is the picture of the gate of the park. And many interesting events are occurring in the park after the construction. I'd like to show you some video of the urban park. It's not huge, but it has very interesting component of Korean traditional landscape and park. So many people in Astana enjoy using the urban park. And second one is vegetation introduction in the RRC area. You may heard about the RRC problem. And we planted more than 10,000 hectares in dried RRC bed using saksaul. Saksaul is a quite unique vegetation, very tolerant to dry and salty area. We planted more than 3.8 million seedlings for 3 years. And also we included a training and education program together with the vegetation introduction. And also we had a small research and development component in the project. Show you some picture again. This is the picture of a dried RRC bed. No vegetation. It's more than 6 million hectares. It's a quite huge area, almost a whole forest land area in Korea. And then Korea Forest Service introduced the vegetation in the area. And you see here some vegetation establishments, especially using saksaul. They are very tolerant on dry and salty area like this. Quite a successful revegetation project in the RRC area. And also we provided some fruit trees seedlings to local people to increase income source. And again, we trained staffs and technicians through training program, and also we did some research in the area and published quite many interesting and useful scientific findings through the project. And currently, Korea Forest Service is working with Tajikistan in forestry sector, 2 components. One is a saksaul plantation in dry area, and the other one is pistachio. Pistachio, you know, the fruit, and pistachio plantation for local people income source. In Tajikistan, they have quite large area of very dry area, especially border between Afghanistan. In southern part of the country, you see the very dry and barren land on the picture. And we plan to introduce a saksaul species in the area. Previously, quite a lot of people were living in the area, but the living condition became worse and many people left the area. So we tried to introduce saksaul species in the area. And also, we try to improve pistachio plantation using new techniques like grafting and cuttings, like photo on your right-hand side. We hope those projects will increase income source for local people. This project is on the way now. And then Korea Forest Service provided some funding for Greening Dryland Partnership Program. We had UNCCD COP10 meeting in Changwon several years ago, and Korea Forest Service donated $2.4 million for 11 countries, and especially 3 Central Asian countries had some funding for restoration of degraded land through UNCCD. And I'd like to propose some possible project in Central Asia using the name of Green ODA. I thought land use change, and forest is very important in Central Asia, because again, land degradation is rapidly occurring in the area. So we could think of many projects related to land use change, and forestry. As you see here in the picture, very steep slope and erosion is very common in the area. So we could design useful and interesting project related to LUCF. You know, Central Asia is very dry. In other words, the water resource is very important, and also riparian vegetation along the river is very important. However, at this point, water resource management is not so systematic. So we could think of project for the useful water resource management, and also constructing riparian vegetation. And another area is plantation on dry areas. Again, they have a huge dry area, and we need to introduce vegetation on those areas using specific tolerant species. The other area is urban green space related project. Of course, they have urban forest, urban park, etc. However, they need to be more wisely developed and managed. So urban green space is one area we can think of. And then forest recreation and ecotourism will be another area we can think as Green ODA in Central Asia. And agroforestry, windbreak, and fruit trees will be another area we can consider in Central Asia. As you see here, this is the landscape near the airport of Almaty in Kazakhstan. You see a lot of flat area for crop production. However, they need good wind breaks to prevent wind damage for crops. This is a good windbreak construction, but in many cases, you don't have that. So we need to combine agriculture and forestry together for wise land use. And also we can use useful economic fruit trees for local people income source. Again, we may use poplar trees, very fast growing tree species, as a windbreak. And also we can think of many agroforestry related projects. Finally, some prospect. First of all, awareness. Especially policymakers should aware the importance of forest in sustainable development using Green ODA. And I think more active collaboration on forestry through international organizations would be very useful and needed. through GGGI or some other international organizations. And also, we need to have a strong financial and or technical support for green ODA in Central Asia. And especially sharing knowledge and experiences on forestry will be very useful. If I add a few more things, when we design green ODA, we may think of a comprehensive approach, not just one single component. We needed to combine several components together, and socio-economic aspects should be considered, and especially collaboration among sectors would be needed. And again, connection with the global agenda or issue is needed. And we need to set up long-term goals and target, and we consider generating income source through project. And also we needed to take balance between appropriate technology and advanced technology together. Of course, capacity building should be included. This is all I have. Thank you very much. It's in Russian, spasiba in Russian, and rahume in Kazakhstan. In other words, thank you very much. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Professor Son. Now, please give a round of applause as I invite Dr. Dongkyun Park, Head of Forestry Program of CSD Lab.
Good morning and good evening. My name is Dongkyun Park, and Professor Son introduced his experience in Central Asia with the Korea Forest Service. Now, I'm going to present our experience in Africa with the COICA and GGGI and other agencies and UNDP. And topic is enhancing capacity to address climate change by focusing on forestry sector in Ethiopia. We work with Professor Jung. Next. And the real title is Capacity Building on Climate Change with a focus on forestry sector in Ethiopia for higher education sector. And its duration is, it started 18 January and end last year, 2020, for 3-year project. Next. Why we select and did in Ethiopia? Ethiopia's their NDCs has ambitious target, and most of their to achieve their NDC, they should reduce the carbon emission using forest by deforestation or sustainable forest management. So for Ethiopia, forestry sector is very important. Next. And today, Mr. Ambassador An mentioned about how to implement the NDC or reach the target, NDC target. And here is the one way, the REDD plus, especially increase sequestration by afforestation and deforestation or sustainable forest management, or even Frank mentioned about the smart cook or others. So forestry can contribute to reach this NDC target. So that's why we selected the forestry program in Ethiopia. Next. See these, it shows the solution analysis and the situation in Ethiopia. They need some increased capacity of effective implementation of NDC. So we try to introducing these programs, increase the capacity to respond to climate change disaster and to identify new engines of green growth for Ethiopia. Next. So this project, the organization structure was a participating organization. The implementing agency is Korean University. In counterpart in Ethiopia is Hawassa University, with the support from the Ethiopian government. And here in Korean side, GGGI, UNDP, and CSD lab and other the agencies. Next. So the activities has 5 parts, especially for the education part. So we provide the curriculum development and improvement and provide some teaching materials. Also, we supply some lab training facilities and methodologies to measure carbon influx, and stakeholder workshops for university students and then the professors and then decision makers in the environmental sector for the government. And also we organize side events in UNFCCC COPs. And next one. So especially this is the education program. So curriculum development and improvement. Our direction was to deliver a variety of social scientific, rural scientific, and technical educational forms to faculty and students. And then under the themes of the global climate change reason, Paris Agreement, low emission climate resilient development strategies, and MRB, and also forestry program, UNED, and also the Professor Son also the participate this project, and transfer of forest technology in Korea. So the Korea-Ethiopia cooperation in forestry sector and Korea's forest greenification and experience and transmission. So we hold some short-term training in Hawassa University and for the government officers in environmental Ministry of Environment. Okay, next. And also some teaching materials. In Ethiopia, there are not enough the books and some materials for teaching. So we provide some teaching materials, such as next. We developed 8 materials, teaching materials for their forestry sector educations. For the MRB and Paris Agreement and Korean's experience for Green Korea and others. Next. And for lab training, they need usually how to measure the carbon influx or some other the experiment. So we provided the forestry equipments and also those the tools to measure carbon influxes. And then also we have some classes for how to use them in the field. Next one. And also the stakeholder workshops and 6 times. Next. And the 18 and the 19, we had the workshops in Addis Ababa and Hawassa, but this year, due to the COVID-19, we had online class and online lectures. Next. And side events, because this is very important to show and let the people in outside to know the Korean government is doing this, and also what the achievement of this project. So, and so for the direction is diffusing the project achievements, and then the process was participate in UNFCCC COPs and then in Poland and Sweden, Spain, and also the some kind of education class in the COP. Next. So this indication shows the achievement of our project. 66 improvement course development and some 8 teaching materials, and then more than around 10 pieces of laboratory equipment, and also those 2 side events. So the output was really good. Next one. But starting with this first phase is 3 years, is incubating process. So climate diplomacy focused and supporting from the COICA, And now this is a second stage as a piloting phase, implementing pilot activities. The $12 million KOICA project is now processing. And also we wish the other one is Korea Forest Service is introducing the PFI and P4G and in Ethiopia. We hope that this project support the Ethiopia's green country. And after this, the second phase, we really hope this third phase, introducing new full-scale implementation project. It's not the project level, but some jurisdictional level or country level with the support from the Green Climate Fund. Next. This is the theory of change. This the concept note. Next. Main idea is forest conservation and restoration is implemented on 13,000 hectares of degraded land. This is important. And next one. You see the previous speakers mentioned that the portion of the Korea green ODA is not sufficient or behind the OECD average. So these two projects may be complements those behind this OECD average in green ODA. But my conclusion is, in the case of SDGs in Korea, KOICA focused on the people, planet, prosperity, peace, for peace. And then they are developing global cooperation system, emphasizing the economy, society, especially the environment and the people in the big frame of partnership with the UNDP, GGGI, or Korea Forest Service, or the civilian societies. In particular, forests must play a pivotal role in achieving environmental goals. For the short-term countermeasures to overcome the COVID-19 outbreak and the Green New Deal, I believe that KOICA should actively promote support in the environment sector, especially in the forestry sector in Africa and South Africa and Mongolia and various regions of Central and South Asia. In this process, we can achieve the OECD's green ODA markers, or we can improve our green ODA the portion to meet the OECD average or OECD target. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Park, for your insightful presentation. Now, I would like to introduce a special guest, Mr. Pyongyang, Director of International Cooperation Division of Korea Forest Service, with a big welcome.
Yeah, how are you doing, everybody? All of the distinguished participants. My name is Pyongyang. I'm the Director of International Cooperation Division of the Korea Forest Service. Yeah, so I'm gonna show up my PPT material. Okay, so I'm going to explain a little bit about some green ODA in forestry sector, just like other previous two researchers. So how it has been made in Korea. So you are facing the multiple layers of threat. First one is the crisis of COVID-19 pandemic. But behind of this COVID-19 pandemic, the economic recession. But the biggest threat is climate crisis, also biodiversity collapse. So it is one of the cartoon about some background of the climate change. So basically, this climate crisis has been resulted from human activity, maybe human beings, their existence, human beings themselves. It makes it really difficult to address the climate change. There will be a COP26 UNFCCC this coming November. So I also wish the COP 2016 will provide some solution to deal with the climate change. And last year, Korean government also has pledged the net zero carbon neutrality as far as 2050. So my content is, first one is some background of some forestry restoration, the history in Korea. And second chapter is ODA. And third one is really particular one. That's REDD. It is somewhat different from the ODA, but it's a very crucial methodology to tackle the climate change, especially the deforestation problem, especially in tropical area. So let's look at some background of the Korean history. So those are the message of the global leader. So what you need these days is solidarity. There was the message from the Secretary General of the United Nations, and Pope Francis has said, when there was the Earth Day last year, God always forgives. People sometimes forgives, but nature never forgives. That was the very meaningful message from the Pope. And our President Moon also says, when our neighbors are in pain, we also feel pain. It was the situation of Korea in 1950s and 1960s after the Korean War. Almost the entire Korean forest has been destructed. So we started from nothing. There was the downtown's landscape. But look at the Inwang Mountain. There was a totally degraded land in 1950s. There was a very common landscape in 1960s and 70s. So we started our whole country level, reforestation campaign from 1973, and we have planted more than 10 billion trees so far. So how was it possible? The strong leadership, and we had our own agency taking care of this reforestation and people's participation. And Korean economy itself has been developed. It's the outline of Korea Forest Service. About 1,800 people are working, and we are managing 22 national acts. And our annual budget is about $2.1 billion. So when you look at this diagram, shows Republic of Korea has made the most successful reforestation for last 25 years, from 1990s until 2015. So Professor Son already has mentioned there are 3-4 countries which have made very successful reforestation. So Korea is really one of the most remarkable cases. So when you look at some growing stocks increase for 25 years, Korea is really number one among 37 OECD countries and G20 countries. But when you look at some nominal amount of the growing stock, Korea is number 3. Slovenia and Poland, former, the Soviet countries, after the 1990s, Slovenia and Poland also have made really the great achievement. Next chapter, some ODA in forestry sector. So Korea Forest Service, we are doing more than 10, ODA projects in developing countries. Most of them are Asian countries, but nowadays we are expanding our collaboration with African countries. As Dr. Park has mentioned, Ethiopia and DR Congo. And we have a lot of some international organization partners. For example, AFOCO, FAO, UNCCD, COP, and a lot of other international organizations. Let's look at some ODA budget standing. There are some core ministries. These agencies are leading the ODA. That's the Export and Import Bank of Korea, EDCF, and KOICA and Bank of Korea. and Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Economy and Finance. Those are the central role of the ODA. And in Korea, it's really some distinguished character of the Korean ODA policy, because all of the central ministries, respectively, they also can start their own ODA project. So let's look at some other sector. Number one is Ministry of Agriculture. Number two is education. Number three is health and welfare. And then number four is trade. And then number five is personal management. And number six, that's the rural development. So Korea Forest Service is number 8 among each sector's ministry. So in 2018, our direct ODA was about 12 million US dollar, but actually we are managing more than 2 times, because we are doing the not only direct ODA but also other methodology. For example, REDD, such a thing. So this year, 2021, we are managing 14 million US dollar ODA as direct ODA, and some more the financial research for the project. So those are some of our examples, working with the other international organization, for example, with the FAO, Forest Landscape Restoration Mechanism. Now it has become about 7 years. And CBD, we also have other, the collaboration project. FERI, that's Forest Ecosystem Restoration Initiative. And we are also managing 2 different initiatives with UNCCD. That's the Changwon Initiative and Peace Forest Initiative. Also, we are working with the coffee, that's the Central African Forest Initiative, and PIPOG. And AFOCO, that's the biggest outcome. We have been working with it started from the ASEAN country, but now it became more than ASEAN country. And officially from the 2018, AFOCO, ASEAN Forest Cooperation Organization, has officially launched. And now we have the 15 member countries, including the Republic of Korea. And we are working with the coffee Central African Forest Initiative. Those are some programs to make the regeneration of some Congo Basin area, the forestry sector. So we are working with some 6 European countries. So Korea is the only non-European Union participant as donor country. So we are investing our money and technology for 6 Central African countries. For example, DR Congo and Gabon and Republic of Congo and other countries. So Korea is really special in forestry sector because we have our legacy and we are very strong in forest-based welfare, policy and activity and service. And we are making really great amount of international contribution to Asian country by AFOCO and to African country by coffee. And we are trying to maximize forestry sector's contribution to attain NDC until 2030 and net zero until 2050. Let's take a look at the REDD. It's pretty new, probably the outside of forestry sector. When you look at the Paris Agreement, Article 5 is dealing with the concept of the REDD. What does REDD stand for? Reducing emissions from the deforestation and land degradation in developing countries, and some more activities to strengthen the forestry resources. So when you look at this diagram of REDD, a lot of developing countries, forest became the emission factor because of deforestation and forest fire. So when you look at the graph, that emission is steadily increasing. Once we started the REDD program, if it curved down, then it means that is the outcome of the REDD program. So Korea Forest Service has been doing the 4 pilot projects in Indonesia, Cambodia, and Myanmar, and Laos, and we are delivering these outcomes to the voluntary carbon market located in the United States. And in case of the Cambodia, we already have attained some carbon credit in voluntary market. So we're going to start our, some, sub-country level, REDD project in DR Congo from this year. And our, destination is Haut-Uele province. That is the northeastern province of the DR Congo. So we're going to start our REDD project, which is, supported from the COICA, and UNDP will be working with us as the implementing agency. As a matter of fact, DR Congo is really great destination of the REDD. So there are 3 projects made by UNDP and 2 projects made by FAO and 2 projects by World Bank and 1 project from JICA. So let's look at the Green Climate Fund located in Songdo, Korea, GSHEP. So GSHEP, when you look at the GSHEP, they are investing their financial resources to 8 strategic result area. And forestry sector is related with the 8th one, forest and land, and 3rd one, ecosystem service. And forestry sector is the really biggest one, providing from the green climate, the fund, more than, now 1 billion, more than 1 billion from the public sector. And GSHEP has approved 8 REDD projects on the basis of result-based payments from Brazil to Costa Rica. And totally these 8 countries, combined with these 8, the project, as much as about 500 million US dollar. That's the GSHEP's concern and support to the REDD. And apart from the GSHEP, World Bank also has been supporting REDD. They have their own program named Forest Carbon Partnership Facility. And they are supporting 2 different types. First one is Readiness Fund, about almost 500 million US dollar. So they have been supporting 47 countries to start the REDD. And Carbon Fund, that's in field activity. 18 countries are already have some ongoing project, and they are trying to start field level REDD project. Let's look at the voluntary market. As I have mentioned, Korea Forest Service has been making use of the voluntary market for the pilot project of the REDD. And when you look at the voluntary market, REDD is the biggest sector. So it means the REDD has really big, potential to address the climate change, because LULUCF is about 20–30% when you look at the entire globe's greenhouse gas emission. Let's look at our next schedule. Probably next year, May 2020, the Korea Forest Service and FAO will be hosting the World Forestry Congress. It's every 6-year event and biggest event to invite all of the forestry experts and researchers. And the World Forestry Congress will become really record-breaking event, because this year, 2021, there will be a COP26 of the UNFCCC, and CBD will also hold the COP15. So all of the result of these 2 remarkable events will be delivered to World Forestry Congress next year. So please be concerned and interested in forestry sector to deal with the green ODA and climate crisis to attain the NDC and carbon neutral society. Thank you.
Thank you, Director An. Next, please welcome Professor Chung, Division of International Studies of Korea University.
Thank you, Haeun, for your introduction. Let me just share the screen before I start my presentation. So I assume that everybody can see my screen. we are at 12:30 Seoul time, and I know that participants in the East Coast of the United States, it's getting very late. Thank you very much for your indulgence in still sitting in your room to participate in this conference. My presentation has some purposes. Number one, as an organizer of this conference today, I know that we have many presentations and we have several sessions. So I thought that it'll be good for me to provide some sort of the time to wrap up some of the major findings that we could share from the opening session and first and second sessions. In opening sessions, we heard about the general visions of the distinguished speakers. In the first session, I personally really liked it. We heard the different aspect of the global trends in the Green ODA, from the issues on governance, and then perspectives from the GGGI and the UNDP Seoul Policy Center, who equally indicated that Korea needs to be a little bit more active in the enhancing its role in the Green ODA, especially climate change. And then we also had a very good presentation by Barbara, who put the sort of the inputs on the issues related to climate finance. And then finally, Rob Stowe from Harvard, he helped us better understand why Green ODA is important in the context of the Paris Agreement. In the session 2, where we are now, then you may have noticed that we heard about the specific Korean cases, mainly focusing on forest sector. And then now, what I would like to do, I want to, as I said, sort of draw some of the general implications from these sessions. At the same time, I personally had my own thoughts on what Korea needs to do. So this is going to be my presentation. I only have 3 slides because we are running out of time. I'm going to go through each slide very quickly, but I will be critical in the pinpointing out some of the major elements that the Korean society, not only the government, also other stakeholders in Korea, together with the international players, can consider. So I'm sorry for the international people. I put 2 different things. The first one that you can see my photo is a capture of the small newspaper opt-out article that I wrote last year in July. 2020 July, as you can see in the right hand side of my slide, it was the very important time for Korea in the context of the Green ODA, because this is a time when Korean government announced the Green New Deal policy. So my article was that, okay, I looked at the very details of the Green New Deal policy, including the government budget plans approved by the National Assembly, that's Korean Congress. And then at the point, I personally couldn't avoid expressing my feeling that I'm very sorry about this plan, because I couldn't see I only could see very, almost none about the international cooperation aspect of the Green New Deal policy. So that has led me to write this article, where I emphasize that Korea used to be a global trading country. So being engaged in trade policies that helped Korea actually to grow for such a short period of time. And then even in the context of Green ODA, of course, it's very, important for Korea to focus on domestic affairs. However, if we want to be a little bit more critical about creating jobs, that's one of the main purposes of Green New Deal, then I think domestic market of Korea is too small. As a trading country, Korea needs to be international. I understand that the European Union, for instance, when they announced the Green New Deal policy of their own, that they emphasize that, okay, we're going to focus on the creating jobs within the EU. I understand that. And then that's important because EU itself can be a large enough, the market, to create enough jobs for people of EU. However, in case of Korea, if we want to create the Green New Deal related jobs, we need to focus on not only Korea, but also international, not necessarily market though, international society as a whole. It could be developed countries like the United States, or it could be developing countries. If we want to work on developing countries, that is related to Green ODA. However, at the time, once again, I was hoping that, okay, this is just the announcement today. So I do hope that I want to see that, Korean government can come up with another, plan actually to talk about how to engage with developing countries. Here we go. Around the end of, last year, then we start to see the term of the Green ODA in the Korean society. Anyway, and then on the right-hand side of my slide, there is another term, such as the net zero policy, which is very, very important. As we all know, that the net zero policy, Korea aims at achieving this goal by 2050. That's a long-term policy. This initiative started to happen after the Paris Agreement in 2015, actually. And then Korea, actively joined this initiative, right? I welcome the President Moon's, announcement on this policy. So in order to meet the target under the net zero policy, if you take a look at the Korean emission reduction target, then it says that by 2030, Korea needs to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 37%. Among the 37%, 4.5%, initially it was 11.3, but it has been reduced to 4.5%, needs to be reduced by using international market mechanism. That's what Rob Stowe says, Article 6. So then naturally, you can see even in my slide that international market mechanism or Article 6 related issues will be critical. And then in this 4.5 portion, there is a one specific sector mentioned, that's forestry. That's why I think Korea Forestry Service and then experts who talked about the forest issues this morning are important to consider. And then if we want to understand the Korean ODA, Green ODA policy in the near future, there are two more important elements specifically important to Korea. There's two new policy. One is a new northern policy. Second, new southern policy. New northern policy includes the sort of the northern part of the Asia. Some of the countries were mentioned by Professor Sun's presentation. It can also include Mongolia. So, these are the important partners, not only for the ODA purpose, but the geopolitical purpose for Korea in general. And there is another group of the countries which are important for Korea. They are Southeast Asian countries. So new southern policy, actually in the context of ODA, targets at these country group as well. So these 5 elements actually drove our attention to put the more emphasis on the Green ODA of Republic of Korea. And then I think before I move to the next slide, I think you can agree with me on this. Green ODA, of course, should be very, very important. Number 1. Number 2, it should be aligned with Korean domestic policies in general, of course. Number 3, it needs to be also aligned with international trends, right? I think we need to consider that 3 points. Then what should we do? That's the next slide. So I try to be, simple, to put many different things all together. The first point, in the Green ODA, it's a self-explanatory. If you have been listening to the previous presentations today, climate change is very, very important, right? In climate, As Frank pointed out, somehow Korea tend to focus on the adaptation, I would say too much. So at least we need to balance between mitigation and adaptation. When I looked at the previous, big size of the Korean ODAs, which could be called as ones to relate to the climate change, most of them were too much adaptation focused. There used to very little mitigation. But if we understand the Paris Agreement, if you understand the Green New Deal policy in general, if we understand the net zero policy, what it means, then Korea must increase the portion of the mitigation. By the way, Korea must increase the portion of climate change in general among its ODA portfolio. Okay, and then areas of the focus within the climate, which could include forestry, especially if you are interested in working with less developing countries. Forestry is the leading sector, and renewables are getting more important. And then if we go to actually developing countries, so you will realize that, as Luis mentioned, that good governance is very, very important. And then even if they want to actually implement the good policies, they don't know what to do, because in many cases, they don't have sufficient institutions available in the public sector, not even before going to the private sector. That's why Barbara mentioned that maybe in climate finance, at least at this time, the public sector, public finance seems to be very, very important. I understand that once institutions would be set up, then the private investor will come inside naturally. But there are more needs for public sectors to play in by strengthening the institutions' governance structure in developing countries. I know this not necessarily based on theory only, but also based on my personal experiences, even the interviewing, meeting, and then exchanging views with government officers of the several developing countries. Of course, climate is not the only one. In the context of Green ODA, circular economy has become more important than before, especially in the context of Green ODA. That's the true with the European Green New Deal. When I looked at President Biden's climate change policy in general, I see that smell embedded in the US as well. And then that's true if you are interested in microplastic or plastic wastes, and then this is about the circular economy. Marine environment has not been emphasized as much as it was supposed to be in general, not necessarily in Korea, but in general in the society of the world. But if you think about the climate, ultimately the decisive sector to decide global climate system is ocean, right? But ocean is too big for us to work on. Maybe that's why, but it's time for Korea to have a more interesting marine environment. If you're interested in not only mangrove, but marine conservation and others, I think the marine environment should be added to the list of the Green ODA in Korea. So it used to be, if we take a look at the previous portfolio of the Green ODA related project of the Green related ODA in Korea, then they used to focus on project activity level. But if we are interested in governance and then institutions and some other capacity building related matters, readiness, capacity building, and even, do you know what? Public awareness is very important. As Rob said, that carbon pricing is important, but as far as I understand, most of the developing countries, they either don't understand the concept of Article 6, or even they don't understand the benefits of carbon pricing. They only think, they would assume that, well, this is another form of eco-imperialism. So there is certainly needs to enhance the public awareness in general. Here, public could mean their government sector as well. So in general, that's very, very important, because all these new forms of the climate change related ODA activities or elements are new to everybody, not to only developing countries, also to Korea, also to other developed countries as well, simply because Paris Agreement was adopted in 2015. This is a new climate change regime. This is not a continuous climate change regime. It's a completely new. So it's not that long time ago. And then finally, it's time for us to focus on not only subnational, and then Dr. Park mentioned about the necessary to focus on the national level of the activities. I also would like to add one more. Regional level of the support needs to be given. Actually, many of the environment and climate change, especially, are transnational. And then if your ODA scheme is supposed to support only one target country, not several countries at the same time, sometimes you might lose some important points actually to address climate change problem. So in the sense that I would hope that the Korean ODA policy, green ODA policy, even ODA policy in general, could include some of the possibilities to support, not many though, but critical regional level, in other words, transnational level of the activities by several countries at the same time. If we think about, for instance, a super grid or creating a Northeast Asian carbon market, I'm sure that you agree with me, immediately on this. And then this is my last slide. So what should you do? I just provide some of my thoughts to improve Korean green ODA policy. That's for the government, and then ODA agencies in general. And then what can we do? Those who are in this room, also those who are watching our conference today, what can you do in general? To make a long story short, I think that green ODA diplomacy is critical. Here, what do we mean by the green ODA diplomacy? I try to say it means development of the green partnership. Then what can we do? First of all, between country and country, right? Because ODA is about helping or working together with a developing country, right? And I was indicating not only working with a developing country, we need to work with some developing countries too. But anyway, that's about the ODA. So here, if you understand the Korean climate change, strategy, then especially in the context of Article 6, if you read Article 6 text of the Paris Agreement, this is the only article which promotes the cooperation between or among the countries. So we can design this cooperation beyond the issues of the carbon pricing, though. It must include the carbon pricing, but it is not all about the carbon pricing. We can include more. So in this context, Korean government, we all know that is ready to utilize so-called climate change cooperation agreement to make this complicated concept easy for you to understand. It's about, say, FTA agreement in the climate area by Korea and the partner country. Then it's easy for you to understand, right? So please actively use this framework in general whenever we develop the green ODA policy by Republic of Korea. That's for the government. Second, develop multilateral partnership such as a Korea Green Initiative for All. So I'm proposing this partnership should be driven by the government or public sector in general. So ODA, considering the importance of ODA, we understand that even if Korea would increase its budget to support ODA, as Frank and Stefan suggested, still it's not enough. So in that case, Korea must find the partners who would be willing to share the resources together with Korea. And that this can be done not only between or among the governments, but also including international organizations, right? Because these are the main players in the working together with the government. ODA is it should be implemented by the government, right? So we need to have that. Third point, that's for us. That's not enough. We need more. What can we do? We need to have another forum which could provide expertise and experiences, sometimes a mediated role between the governments or critical players, okay? It doesn't have to be policy per se, but crucially working with the policy circle. And then in our area of the work, we call it as 1.5 track, including some government players, and then those who are doing research or advocacy activities or some related things, related to government activities, right? Like today's conference, we invited, government officers, right? And then the global think tanks, international organizations, universities, and others, right? In that sense, this kind of the, conference can be a transfer into sort of the 1.5 track, the partnership forum, where we can form a regular dialogue and to provide some inputs to the circle. Oh, okay, so this is the end of my presentation. I do hope that I provided some of the summaries for the discussions that we had. I spent more time than I initially planned. I'm sorry for that, but thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chung. Please give another big applause to all the presenters for their insightful analysis on the different approaches to climate change. With this, we conclude